With James Scott in the portal, what happens next?
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this special Sunday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the University of Louisville, third year hosting this show, and I want to take the time to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox with no console needed. Head to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. James Scott has unexpectedly entered the portal for the Louisville Cardinals. We're going to discuss what's next, how should Louisville proceed, and much more. We'll identify the new portal football commitments, Joseph Jefferson II from Purdue and Jacob Stewart from San Jose State, while discussing what they bring to the table. And also Tyler Shough drafted number 40 to New Orleans, why this is great for both of those parties and why it's great for Jeff Brohm moving forward, coming up at the final point of the show. Thank you all for your patience last week. I know there were only 3 episodes. Actually, was it 3 or 4? Regardless, it wasn't the normal 5, and I apologize for that. I knew that there was going to be some significant news in regards to Case and Pryor's announcement, which was set to happen right as I left for my little mini vacation in Texas. So brought the recording equipment. Thank you all for your patience, as that episode didn't air until Thursday. But I wanted to start the week out sort of continuing our conversation from that show in regards to the unexpected decision from James Scott. It seems like the Louisville coaching staff was caught off guard with Scott potentially entering the portal. We knew on Tuesday that some rumors had surfaced that he might end up entering, and we find out Wednesday morning that he did, in fact, submit that paperwork in time, and thus James Scott is in the portal. So how should Louisville proceed? What happens next for the Cardinals? Well, I think for starters, it is my opinion that the Cardinals are going to fill this spot one way or the other. Whether it is Scott coming back, bringing a player in from the portal, other avenues, whatever it may be. I just don't think that the Cardinals say, well, James leaving sucks, but we feel good about our roster. We're going to keep it how it is. Nah, I think that the Cardinals are going to add another player. I think they're going to add multiple players, really, because we heard rumors that they were going to add an international guy anyway. So I think that you had multiple players. So there's a couple different avenues that Louisville could go down. I think the easiest and the most likely is that the Cardinals are going to do their best to try to retain Scott. Pat Kelsey and the rest of his coaching staff are very vocal about how much they love James and how hard of a worker he is and much more. And it seemed like this really caught them off guard. I don't really buy that this is about playing time because nothing has really changed with the Louisville roster. You knew Sinan Deferu has been committed for multiple months. Ali Khalifa is returning. Case and Pryor was rumored to always return. Even then, he plays a different position than James. I just don't buy he wanted to go get more minutes elsewhere. If that's the case, why didn't he enter the portal 2 weeks ago when he had more options? It's pretty clear that it seems like some other team came in and threw him some more money at the 11th hour. And it seems like one of those rumored teams is NC State, which is close to his home of Fayetteville, North Carolina. But anyways, you look forward. I think if there's a way that Louisville can bring him back, that's going to be probably option number 1 for Pat Kelsey. He's a player that Pat Kelsey knows, he trusts, that fits his system, and it's a pretty seamless transition between year 2 and year 3 because he knows his role. But let's say that that's off the table. Let's say he does end up going elsewhere. Maybe it's NC State. Maybe it's somewhere else, but he does go elsewhere. Well, the Cardinals are in a tough spot because there are options. Don't get me wrong. those that act like there are just no options out there for Louisville to fill this spot with, I think it's a little bit misleading. But there is a lack of top options. And what that means is with teams still having needs in the portal, a lack of options creates a higher demand, which in turn inflates the market more. So we've seen how calculated Louisville has been in their approach over the past couple of seasons, especially this year, in the way that they build the roster. Like, they don't really overspend. The return on investment aspect of things is huge, but one question that I want answered, and we'll find out one way or the other, is Louisville willing to overpay for an option out there that might be making more than the Cardinals believe he should, but with the demand out there being so high, does Louisville kind of go all in? Do they push their chips to the center of the table and say, you know what, James left, we're going to go ahead and hit full send and do what we can to be a national championship contender? James Scott, whether or not he was going to start or not, he was going to play a key role. So whether you go out and you maybe look at a player like Baba Miller from Florida Atlantic, who is going to command a pretty penny in NIL money, are you comfortable going out and getting him? There's a couple of other options, but are they going to give you James Scott's minutes? Are you okay with going with a player that might not have the upside of Scott, but he plays a role that can protect the rim, that can rebound well, that can, or that has a semblance of a post game? We kind of talked about what Louisville should do with the roster now, but I think that the portal is going to be in a pretty interesting spot. And one other avenue of this that I hadn't really thought about until a couple people mentioned it to me, maybe Louisville says, you know what, Case and Pryor probably fits better as a 4, but Sananda Frew and Ali Khalifa are your main 5s, and then you can play Pryor at the 5 a little bit, or maybe you start Pryor out at the 5 and bring Frew and Khalifa off the bench and maybe move Hadley to the 4, and then you go out and you pursue one of the top wings that's currently in the portal. Maybe a guy like Jameer Watkins. I know it's not the tallest lineup, but you give yourself a good amount of athleticism there, that toughness that you're looking for. So I think that a 2-guard lineup with Watkins and then Hadley and Pryor, I mean, I think that could work. And whether or not it's Jameer or not, maybe it's, I mean, who knows? Maybe they go entertain potentially bringing in RJ Luis, or, I mean, there's multiple wing options out there. I don't know. I think that the staff is sort of fumbling to get their ducks in a row because they were caught off guard. You know how calculated this staff likes to be. And sort of things like this is that you get caught in an unexpected situation, and it happens all over college sports. So that's just the reality that we live in. So could Louisville say, you know what, we're going to take whatever portal money we had left, we're going to take the money that James Scott was getting, and we're going to pour it into the front court to where we're just going to go versatile. We're going to be switchable on defense. Hadley can play that small ball 4, and we've got Pryor there at the 4 as well. We've got Jameer Watkins at the 3. So maybe it's not an orthodox front court, but we are a matchup nightmare for opposing defenses. And honestly, I'd be okay with that because the options at the 5 right now, pretty slim in the portal, pretty slim in the high school rankings, unless you were to potentially go with the reclassification. You go with the guy who's reclassifying, but who out there is going to be able to come in right away and give you good minutes? Because it's one of those things where, like James Scott, I appreciate everything he did, but I really saw a situation where Frew and Khalifa get the majority of the minutes at that 5 spot. So you have to sort of figure things out of how you're going to address this need. Are you going out and getting a player that maybe has multiple years of eligibility left, that you might buy into the skill set? It's one of those low risk, high reward type players, or do you go out and just go full send for a national championship because it's clear that that's what you've done up until this point? Do you take this opportunity now, with some more minutes available to say, you know what, maybe we can put Pryor at the 5 in certain situations and go out and get that dominant wing that we've been trying to get. Or maybe it's a situation where you go out and just get a rotational 5 that can defend the rim and have a semblance of a post game. The other option, which this is one of those unknowns until you do know type things, international. Louisville's been rumored to go get another international player. Maybe they get 2. Maybe they go out and get another guy that can play the 5 spot. Maybe it's a player for the future, but is good enough to be a rotational player right away. Or maybe it's a really good 5 that you can go out and get to just take James Scott's minutes. So I'm sure we're going to have some clarification coming up in the next week or so. Don't forget, every single year since the portal has been around and players have been able to enter the draft without losing their college eligibility, you find out some names that are in the portal that you didn't already know they were in the portal because they were testing draft waters. There are going to be players that take their names out of the draft. They're going to go back to college. They're going to be in the portal. Boom. There's going to be some names that pop up. Who knows? Maybe, I don't think that this happens, but maybe the 5-year to play 5 rule passes. They get a ruling in court to go their way, and the players that don't have any eligibility that are currently entering the portal, maybe they get some good news, and Louisville can then tap into that market. But I don't know what route they're going to take or what avenue they're going to go down. I'm hoping that we have some clarification coming up in the next couple days, next couple days throughout this next week. So we are going to table the basketball discussion for the moment. Louisville continuing to make some big time additions in the portal on the defensive side, mainly for depth, but still some notable players coming in. Louisville's added 2 more players via the portal that we need to discuss when we come back on this Sunday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Card Nation, the NBA playoffs are here. FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if that bet wins. From 3-pointers, steals, and assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. And as always, I want to take the time to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville, free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. There are going to be 5 episodes this week, just a heads up. Thanks again for being patient with me throughout the month of April. April ending this week, so another month under our belts. And I'm excited to go into the off season and potentially bring on some guests for the show. The spring portal football window, very brief, April 16th to April 25th. It's closed for players not being able to enter. Louisville continuing to pick up some commitments. 2 that we talked about 3 last show. We've got 2 more to talk about today. The first one is Joseph Jefferson, the second, 6 foot, 190-pound defensive back, originally from Purdue. Spent 3 seasons with the Boilermakers. His first year was 2022, which was Brohm's final year. So Jeff Brohm and company very familiar with Jefferson. Recruited him out of high school. He's from Indianapolis, so another Hoosier coming to the Derby City. Redshirted that first year. In his second year, played pretty sparingly. Only had 2 total tackles, and then 2024 saw a career season where played here and there, and then due to some injuries in that Purdue secondary, he became a starter and had a really good end of the season. You look at some of these numbers that he put up on October 5th, had 6 tackles against Wisconsin, 9 against Nebraska, 10 against Oregon State. Doesn't have an interception to his name. Had 2 tackles for loss this past season. Originally was going to transfer to Western Michigan. transferred there in the winter portal, puts his name back in the portal, and ends up coming to Louisville. He's likely going to play safety for the Cardinals, and I'm okay. I'm actually really fine with taking a flyer on a defensive back because there's been some concerns regarding the depth at both of the cornerback and safety positions, and Louisville going out and getting a player that they're familiar with to add to the safety room not only creates for good competition, but it gives you another valuable depth piece. Something that I think is worth noting is that he was a really highly rated player coming out of high school, one of the top 10 players in the state of Indiana. I think he was a 4-star hard hitting safety out of Indiana. So that's kind of what he brings to the table now. I think that he could factor into defending the run. I want to see more from him in the passing defense because it doesn't seem like there's much production there, of course. But once again, if you are looking for starters in the second portal window, I think that your roster management was kind of rough. Now, one starter might be understandable, but multiple, that I think that's pretty lackluster roster management. And Louisville hasn't really gone out and got starters. They've used the remaining spots to diagnose what their needs were, say, hey, look, this is what we need. Let's go out and get some depth. And a lot of these have been that. And that's exactly what you need because football is a 100% violent sport. Injuries happen every single year. Unfortunately, we have seen multiple starting level players get hurt over the past couple of years, and you just have to have the next man up mentality. But to have that mentality, you have to have the players within your program to be able to execute on that. So I like the addition of Jefferson here. I like the familiarity. And I'm also intrigued by this next addition, Jacob Stewart from San Jose State, teammate of Trayshawn Hurry, the wide receiver that the Cardinals just picked up last week. 6'5", 227-pound tight end, originally from Woodland, California, transferred to San Jose State this past year. 34 catches, 287 yards, and 3 touchdowns, averaged 8.4 yards per reception. Spent the previous 2 seasons at the JUCO level at Sacramento State College. What's wild to me is that he was a quarterback coming out of high school. Had a good year his freshman year, got all conference honors in JUCO, and then makes the transition to tight end. So he's relatively new to the position, but I think that this is one of those situations where Brohm and company buy into the skill set, even though he's new to tight end. They think that he has that ability to play at the Power 4 level. And we just saw Louisville pick up Utah tight end C.J. Jacobson. What was our take then? Well, you're adding depth because Dylan Mesman, Grant Hauser were hurt in spring ball. You've got Nate Kariski. You've got Jaleel Skinner, although I think Skinner's more of an H-back. So perhaps it's one of those situations where Louisville just wants to give themselves as many options as they can. It's injury insurance. And Jacobson, you're buying into the skill set and the potential there. And I think with Jacob Stewart, you're sort of doing the same thing a little bit in a different sense because I think Stewart has a little bit more upside than Jacobson at the moment. But it's an interesting route to have gotten here. I don't know how many years of eligibility Stewart has left. At least one, of course. I think with the JUCO ruling, potentially 2. I'm not sure how that's going to work. Same thing with Joseph Jefferson. I think he's got 2 years. He redshirted 2022, played 23 and 24, and then I think he's going to have 2 years of eligibility. So giving yourself, at the very least, 2 years of eligibility with both of these guys, it's key because what has been difficult to do, coaches are still working to attempt to create, is a sense of continuity. And even if it's guys that are there for 2 years instead of 1, that extra year can mean a lot because you're not having all these new players learn your playbook each and every season. So I'm on board with bringing in these depth pieces. I know that you're going to look at some of these names and you're like, Dalton, how can you be excited about this? I mean, this guy doesn't have any college production. This guy didn't really do much. You have to look at what they're being asked to do. They're not being asked to be wide receiver one. They're not asked to be starting safety or the starting tight end. If they get to that level and they exceed expectations and they rise to that rank, sure, I'm all for it. Sign me up. But at the same time, they're depth additions. I'm okay with that. I'm definitely okay with that. The NFL draft was this past weekend. Tyler Shough ends up being the first Cardinal selected, number 40 overall to the New Orleans Saints. I think that this is great for New Orleans. It's great for Tyler, but more importantly, it's really great for Jeff Brohm. More on that when we come back on this Sunday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. First, I want to take the time to tell you about our friends over at Game Time. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game with every bucket, defensive stop, and every moment that feels huge. It's electric in that arena, and with Game Time, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. It makes it easy and fast to get playoff tickets, even when the demand is sky high, because prices on the Game Time app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. The all-in pricing feature is what I love the most because it means that you're not surprised by fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time and download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. I don't know about you all, but I had a huge smile on my face when I saw the news that New Orleans was drafting Tyler Shough early in the second round, number 40 pick overall to be exact. I think that not only is this great for Tyler because he went from a pretty low draft stock to the second round, so he's going to be able to chase his dreams. I like this for New Orleans. This is a great spot for him because Shough is going to be able to come in and compete immediately in training camp. I think that Derek Carr is going to be the penciled-in starter, but it's pretty clear if you're drafting a quarterback in the second round, your intention is to find your QB of the future. And I think that Shough is immediately ready to come in and compete for that spot. You're going up against Jake Haener, Ben DiNucci, Spencer Rattler, and Derek Carr, all of which I don't believe are franchise quarterback options, because if they were, then you would obviously not be drafting a quarterback number 40. But overall, I like this for New Orleans because I think that Tyler Shough is the best quarterback of the five. I know that some Saints fans, they had us record little 1 minute NFL draft spotlights to talk about certain players. And then when they got drafted, those little shorts got published to the corresponding Locked On NFL Teams channel. And Saints fans on my post the first one was like, we can't trust this guy. This guy's on drugs. And I'm like, wow. Look, I know I got some bags under my eyes, but I'm on drugs. My goodness, I stepped into a battlefield. Saints fans don't like this, to say the least. I know that Louisville fans, of course, we have gotten to watch Tyler Shough and all the throws that he can make, and we think he's going to be a good quarterback. And I think that eventually, like Louisville fans, Saints fans will be convinced after they watch him play. But I'm not here to talk about the fit too much. I want to talk about why this is great for Jeff Brohm. This is great for Louisville. Brohm is known as one of the best offensive coaches / gurus in college football. Quarterback whisperer, right? When you have Jeff Brohm on your staff, you don't worry about the quarterback spot. I think that Tyler Shough going to Louisville and getting drafted in the second round is great, whether it's for portal recruiting or for recruiting quarterbacks in general, because it shows that Number one, I mean, Tyler Shough had no NFL draft buzz coming into the season. 24 years old, about to turn 25. It looked like this could be his last year of college ball. Or not last year of college ball, last year of football at a high level, right? Maybe he goes to like the CFL or the Arena League, but future in the NFL doesn't look like its thing. And then he comes to Louisville, has a healthy season where the Cardinals use him as a pro quarterback and not as a dual threat. And he's put into a great position. And he balls out. He stays healthy, and he gets drafted highly in the second round. That looks great for Jeff Brohm because Jeff Brohm now goes to other portal quarterbacks, which he probably, to an extent, probably did with Miller Moss, saying, hey, look, maybe a team is offering you more money, but what's your dream? You want to play in the NFL? I've had multiple quarterbacks make the NFL when I was at Purdue. Look at what I just did with Tyler Shough. His name wasn't even being discussed with the NFL draft. And now he's a projected second-round pick. This can be you. And why is that? Why can you succeed here? Because I run a pro-style offense, which brings me to point number 2. You are going to be centered or going to be surrounded by really good talent in a scheme that is friendly for quarterbacks and playmakers, and one that is pretty comparable to an NBA. Why do I keep saying NBA? I think it's because the FanDuel read has NBA in it, and I've been kind of keeping up with the NBA action here on Sunday. The NFL, sorry. If you want to get on me for making that slip up, sure. I know I'm not perfect, but some people just can't come to grasp with that. Back to the point, you can come to Louisville if you're a prospective quarterback recruit, whether it's the portal, whether it's high school recruiting, you can look at Louisville as a legitimate option for development. And it can be 1 year because you can get some good tape. It's an offense that's going to be tailored to your skill set. We saw it with Jack Plummer. We saw it with Tyler Shough, and we're going to see it with Miller Moss. But yes, the narrative is that he's an offensive guru, right? But now Jeff Brohm has a player that he can point to and say, you want to know what you could turn out like? Tyler Shough. And by the way, if Tyler Shough is 21-22 and has that season, bro's going top 15. He's going to be probably the second quarterback taken on the board. But when it seemed like all hope was lost, Brohm believed in the skill set. He took a low-risk quarterback or a low-risk addition and turned him into a high reward. Well, I guess maybe not low risk because you needed him to be the starter, but sort of talking about, the investment there. So I think this looks great for Jeff Brohm because now Brohm can not only use that narrative, but he says, well, I've got the evidence. Yeah, we're going to be able to compensate you in NIL, but don't you want to go somewhere where you're going to get developed? And it seems like that's becoming less and less important nowadays and more about who's going to pay you the most. But Jeff Brohm finally has someone that he says, look, here you go. So I like this for Tyler. Really excited for him. So glad that he's able to chase his dreams in the NFL. I'm happy for the Saints. I think they've got a diamond in the rough that they have no clue what they're looking at until he steps foot on that field in training camp. More importantly, happy for my guy Jeff Brohm and having the evidence now that he's that guy when it comes to developing quarterbacks, even in the most unorthodox scenarios. So that is going to wrap up this Sunday edition of the show. When we come back tomorrow, going to talk a little bit more about how the draft went. Ashton Gelati, Quincy Riley also getting drafted, where some of the undrafted players went, and much more, especially while keeping our ear to the ground on the basketball side. So that's going to wrap up this Sunday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day, great week. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Go Cards.